Motion.
Well, I mean, they'll have to give us some food to somebody will make a motion.
And then, but am I the one calling for the?
Yes, yep, once we elected the president, yep, that's all you have to do is you have to do the motion.
And we'll do it by roll call vote?
Yep.
All right. We're ready? Oh, boy. Let's call this meeting to order. Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please. Or let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I will be presiding during the nomination and election of the office of president. Nominations do not need a second. However, a motion to close nominations is in order and requires a second. Once nominations are closed, a roll call vote will be used as the method of recording votes. At the conclusion of the vote, the president will be seated and conduct the remaining of the election of officers. Are there any motions for president?
Motion to nominate Roger Myers.
Motion to close.
Is there a second?
Does it need to be a second?
Okay. All those in favor of closing?
Aye.
Ms. Ackermite, roll call vote?
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs? Yes. Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yeah.
Mr. Trombley?
No.
Mr. Connolly?
No.
Okay, that passes 4-2, and pass the meeting on to President Myers.
Thank you, Dr. Alla. Okay, at this point, that moves us to the office of the vice president. Do we have a motion to nominate anyone for vice president? We have a nomination for Ken Stahl.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Mr. Conley. Is there any support? For the motion to close?
No need to, is it?
For the motion to close, there is, yes.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Roll calls for the actual vote, but the motion to close the nomination is voice. So that's what we're on right now. So the motion right now is to close the nomination, which will be by voice vote. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Ms. Ackerman, roll call vote for the election of Mr. Stahl as vice president.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yeah.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes. Mr. Stahl is the vice president. All right, that takes us to the election of the office of secretary. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Krebs.
All right, we have a nomination of Dr. Krebs.
Support.
We don't need a support for the nomination. Either another nomination or a motion to close the nominations.
Motion to close.
Motion closed by Mr. Stahl,
Or
supported by Dr. Krebs. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Ms. Ackerman, roll call vote, please, for the election of Dr. Krebs as secretary.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Trombley?
No.
Mrs. Mitchell?
yeah.
Mr. Conley?
No.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
All right, that passes 4-2. Dr. Krebs, congratulations, Secretary. And that moves us to the election of the treasurer of the board.
I'd like to nominate
Nomination.
Ms.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'd like to nominate Ms. Mitchell.
We have a nomination of Ms. Mitchell. Do we have any further nominations or a motion to close?
Motion to close?
Support.
Motion to close by Mr. Stahl, supported by Dr. Krebs. All those in favor of the motion to close the nomination, say aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Ms. Ackerman, roll call vote for the nomination of Ms. Mitchell as the treasurer.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Dr. Krebs,
Yes.
Mr. Trombley,
Yes.
Mr. Stahl,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
and that passes 6-0. Congratulations, Ms. Mitchell, as the treasurer of the board. All right, that moves us to the next item in the agenda, which is the roll call. Ms. Ackermite?
Okay, Mr. Conley,
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Yep.
Mr. Stahl,
Yep.
Dr. Krebs,
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Yes. All right, next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Moves us to the next item, which is the call to the public for action items only. So anyone that is here this evening that would like to address the board, we have two different segments at which you can address the board. The first segment, which is where we are now, is to address items that are on the agenda. You need to fill out a card that the cards are located at the back of the room. You can then place them in the box there just next to Mr. Engleter and fill out the card, which will indicate whether it's for an agenda item or a non-agenda item. The non-agenda items will be addressed later. And by the way, there is a total of 3 minutes to address the board. And what we'll do is Dr. Krebs, I think you have the cards? Okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with the process, you have 3 minutes to address the board. You have to address the board with your comments, not to other members of the public. When you are at the point at which there are 30 seconds left in your time to speak, Dr. Krebs will give you the yellow card indicating the warning that there are 30 seconds left. At the conclusion of your 3 minutes, she will show you the red card and you will have to conclude your comments. So, without further ado, all right, so looks like we have two to address the board for items that are on our agenda. I take that back. It looks like there are more than that. All right. So the first person who will be called to the podium is Alyssa Davis. And after Ms. Davis will be Brandon Mikas.
Right over here.
Yeah, the podium is up there.
Can I hand these to you?
You can just hand
I
those
can
to
hand them.
Dr.
Thank you.
Rowell, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. That's just some contact information for you. I'll be very quick. I'm here to address the Neola. And actually just here to kind of school you. My name is Elisa Davis. I live downtown Brighton. My daughter, Mary Alice Davis Stockton, is a senior in Brighton High School. Brighton area schools and all related connected entities, and this includes the health department, do not have the power, the authorization, or the right to speak to, counsel, guide, train, administer, or coerce my daughter on any mental or physical health related issues. And this includes both the vaccines, CRT and DEI, et cetera, et cetera. Should an emergency arise, my contact information is found on the business cards provided, as I've provided to the nurse, the principal, the counselors, all at Mary's school. You have no jurisdiction over my child, period. She's mine. Should you have any questions, any concerns, you can reach me. All my contact information is on there. I did this so that public disclosure is provided. Please don't violate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Schmeichus, and after Ms. Schmeichus will be Yvonne Black.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and allowing me to speak. My name is Brandon Mickus. I'm a member of the Brighton community. My daughter goes to school at Hawkins Elementary. I just wanted to touch on a couple things. We know that the State Board of Education is voting tomorrow. And one of the items on the topic that I was told is essentially COVID nurses or COVID, what do they want to call them, vaccine or whatever. But again, like the idea, I don't know if it's possible, but the idea of putting anything inside of a school related to like a COVID nurse or anyone with the capability to vaccinate my child, I will pull my child before that even becomes a thing. The other thing that I want to talk about is discrimination against vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I received a text message from my wife, clarification, Dr. Aula. Am I allowed to address board members or I can't address public? It doesn't matter. Regardless. So in the response, it basically talks about the difference between what a vaccinated student has to do versus an unvaccinated student. If the person is unvaccinated, then they are allowed for the immediate return, but masks are recommended. But the unvaccinated individual would have to stay home for 5 days and then mask for 6 to 10. Is that accurate?
That's the recommendation from the health department, correct?
That's the recommendation. Is that what Brighton's going to follow? Since it's a recommendation, it's not a law. Can I send my kid to school if I disagree with your ruling?
So let's talk about your specific situation. I'm not sure if you're talking about an illness or you're talking about a close contact. Illness is what, are you talking about close contact?
Honestly, I'm open for discussion about it all because the idea of
Yeah, give me a ring
separating
tomorrow
my
and we'll
child
talk.
versus another child
Sure.
for, due to vaccination status is discrimination, period. And when it comes to my opinion. Secondly, it could be hearsay, but I was told that there's rumor about potentially a vote passing authority from the board to Dr. Outlaw to make essential decisions regarding masks and other policy. If that's accurate, I just need a yes or a no. It's not accurate. Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to address it if it is, and I wanted to get it out to be talked about. That's all. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
After Ms. Black will be Jennifer Smith.
Hello, my name is Yvonne Black. I live in Marion Township. If it's green, you're voting on it, correct? So there's a green X next to bylaws, policies, and administrative guidelines. So the Michigan Constitution, Article 8.2, the legislature shall maintain and support a system of free public elementary and secondary schools as defined by law. The school board doesn't get to take superintendent's policies that are violating laws that have no legal authority and then adopting them for the school board. So what's on there is for the superintendent to be able to write administrative guidelines, again, on the policies and the bylaws. Well, guess what? The school board doesn't even have the legal authority to write guidelines. Did you know that? No, you didn't know that because the law states that the school board can only make bylaws and policies and procedures for your self-governance. So the only place that the school code gives authority to guidance is under, was it 1137 or 1173? And it's 1137, and it's specific to that section. And that section is for the parents to come in and review the curriculum. That's the only time in the Michigan law that the school board is allowed to adopt guidelines. And so for the superintendent to come in here and think that he should be able to create guidelines on your policy and your procedures and your bylaws it's absurd. It's completely illegal. And so I don't know if it's the superintendent or if it's Neola, but this is consistent throughout the majority of these policies that this Brighton School District is adopting. They violate the Michigan law. As I said, 0160, which says you have to operate within the Open Meetings Act, it doesn't even exist in your policy. It's gone. It disappeared. And so this board needs to really get their act together and start going by the law, because the Constitution says the legislature makes the laws. Neola doesn't get to override the state law. The school board doesn't get to override the state law, and neither does the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Topoleski.
Just to clarify, my comment was not for an action item, so I don't want to be in trouble when I go up there.
I think just let it go.
All right, that's fine. You want to address it now?
I will, but I just don't want you yelling at me if
I don't yell at anybody.
Well, maybe not
So I
tonight.
just, it was marked, I simply crossed off the one item. So that's fine. I mean, if you'd like to do it now, Ms. Smith, or
Okay.
later, it's up to you.
Okay, so Jennifer Smith, Brighton, downtown. Two things I want to talk about, and the first thing is that I will piggyback off of what Yvonne said. The board is constantly violating your own bylaws, and it is proof positive the majority of you must not be aware of your own board policy, which has been proven to us parents in person time and time again when we witness the discomfort of other board members here when presented with board packets from previous subcommittees that are reviewing the policy with none other than a third party, Neola. And you guys will sit here and you'll argue that Neola is your governing policy body. But truthfully, the more that we unravel Neola, the further corrupt that it all looks. So we're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to stop coming here and bringing it up. And I hope that you really start to heed what your own policy and bylaw is, because I don't think that it's clear to you the way that it's clear to us. And if there is that much of an understanding gap from parents to the board, then maybe you guys should engage parents by replying to emails. Just saying. The other thing is a personal item. I think that these pods in elementary schools are completely off the rails. They're damaging to our kids and their social skills, and they're damaging our kids with their emotional growth. They're stuck with the same 4 to 6 kids all of the school day. Break, lunch, library, and now after returning from Christmas break, they get to go to gym and be stuck with the same 4 to 6 people in gym class. Because guess what? We can't violate their pod because we're still contact tracing, even though we say we're not contact tracing. So somebody needs to do something about this. And as most of us adults have experienced in our growing up school education, part of school is going to school and getting to be on the playground or have lunch with your buddy, even if you're not in the same classroom. How do you explain that's justifiable to a 9-year-old or younger? I don't get that, because as a parent, it's leaving me with a decision to leave the district. And I can tell you that if you guys don't start making a relationship with many of us here, that's going to be the movement. Just saying.
Thank you. After Ms. Topoleski will be Nicole Pellis.
Good evening. My name is Susan Topoleski. I'm in Green Oak Township. I have one student in the Brighton area schools. There are a couple of things I wanted to address to the board tonight. One of them is for action item tonight. You guys are going to be looking at policy order 8310, and this is in regards to public records. And my concern with the way this policy is going to be presented to you all to accept is that option 2 is what was chosen on this specific policy. Option 2 states the board chooses not to provide for enhanced access to any of its public records. Option 1 would have given the option for the superintendent to provide access to any public record which the district has stored in an electronic database and is not confidential or exempt from disclosure by state or federal statute. Such a record may be provided by means of a computer disk provided by the requester, electronic mail, or a modem providing the requester has paid the fee established for such transmission. My question is, why would you not want to give people submitting a FOIA request access to enhanced access to any of your public records? What is there to hide? I'm very confused by this. The other thing I would like to address is something Mr. Trombley brought up last time in the December meeting, which was he wanted a breakdown of each policy rather than a big packet of policies that you all are supposed to vote on, carte blanche. I would highly encourage you to do that. Break out each individual policy instead of giving them a stack this big and saying, accept them all or accept none. We parents, grandparents, community members are looking very closely at all of these Neola policies and all the things that you all are doing. And to accept things in a big bundle, just like our federal government does, instead of looking at individual things for their merit, is this worth passing? Is this not worth passing? Let's discuss it. Let's figure it out. You owe that to your constituents to do that. So I'm requesting that you do so. Please break them out, discuss them, give access to the public so we can know and see what you are considering. And a final point is this. I have many great concerns about Neola and your involvement with them. I have the records that show that the agreement was signed in the year 2000, 22 years ago. That was done by the then superintendent at that point in time. I'm not sure why a superintendent would be the one signing a contract with a group that is supposed to help the Board of Education with policy. Again, another big red flag in my mind, and I will continue to pursue more information about it. So please consider maybe ending your agreement and contract with Neola. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll calls.
My items are not necessarily for action.
You can wait till the second portion if you want. That's fine.
Just go right now if you'd like.
It's up to you.
Good evening, I'm Nicole Colors from Brighton. First thing is Neola is bad news. Everything I've seen is just horrifying. And the more we dig, the worse it gets. Second, I would like to invite you all to the bowling meet on Monday, January 17th. I sent an email earlier today regarding what I've seen with the bowling team. And we're 7 weeks in and we still don't have jerseys. Just look
I'm
for
sorry,
the
did you say the bowling team?
bowling team, Brighton High School bowling team.
I couldn't hear. I just.
Sorry. 7 weeks in, we don't have jerseys. What other team is like that? Third, the pods. I have a kindergartner. She hates school now. She fights me every single morning because she hates her pod. She doesn't get to play with her friends, and she does not want to go to school anymore. She was so excited about school, she dressed up as a bluebird, which is their class mascot. She dressed up as a bluebird for Halloween. She was so excited. Her spirit is broken right now, all because of these pods. Some of you have forgotten that children are tiny people trying to figure out this world. They're allowed to have big feelings and big emotions. We need to stop expecting children to handle their emotions, especially when they're being burdened with adult fears. We have parents in our district that are locking their kids in their rooms when they're COVID positive. I don't know about your kids, but when my kids are sick, they want to be cuddled. They want their parents. They want to be nurtured. They don't want to be locked in the room alone. We have parents in our society who are locking their kids in trunks. That's what our world has turned into because of COVID. We need to get a reality check and think about what we're doing to these kids, because it's not good. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there no more, Mr. Angleton, are there more in the box? All right. Okay, that will close the call to the public and move us to the superintendent report. Dr. Allen.
Sure, I'll be very brief. First thing I'll do is, I know we talked about this last month, but this is January is officially Board Recognition Month. So I want to again say thank you to the board for your service. I know it's been a tough time. It's a thankless job, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you do for the district and our children. So thank you. Secondly, I've requested possibly having it on the 24th, but I've requested to have a work session with the board where we have a chance to talk about a few important topics, not action items, but just discussing some important topics where we can have some back and forth. Specifically, talking about security is one of the big ones. I'd like to be able to come to that meeting with some recommendations for future action items related to the board. We'll probably have some staffing implications in there, as well as a few things regarding facilities that specifically I've been looking for some board action on. Also like to talk about our strategic planning goals and get some feedback directly from the board. I know I've shared those in draft form with you, but I'd like to have a chance to talk through those a little bit with the Board of Education. And then in whatever form it's at this point, there's work going on about added scope or potential projects if there's additional contingency dollars. We've had that discussion here. I'd like to bring that list. Mr. Ingleter, Mr. Jacobs from operations, and a variety of others have been putting things together, and we'd like to get that in front of the board as well, where we can start having some good conversations on that. So those are three topics that I'd like to throw out there, and obviously that could adjust, but I wanted to throw that out there. We've been doing a security review since almost immediately after the tragedy in Oxford. We have a good group of people that have been fantastic. Officer Bell in the back is our police liaison. We have other law enforcement folks, both active and.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh.
But apparently the YouTube feed went down. Is Nick here?
Give me 1 second.
He might have done.
It's on me, so. All right. Is that whole thing? Okay. I'm just saying, on the 20.
It went down, it just.
Yeah. So on the 24th, I'd like to have a work session, talk about strategic planning, security, and then what was the third? Oh, contingency projects for the bond. So throwing that out there to you, but that's one request. And then the next one, at our last meeting, we had some conversation about the JROTC program. I know you've had a chance in the past, I believe in 2018, this was a topic for the Board of Education. And it was a request for some preliminary information. Ms. Mosier has put together a lot of information for the board. I know I shared that with you recently, and you have a copy of that in front of you, a variety of information on that. And what the board, or what we need from the board, the administration, what we need from the board is direction. Do you wish that the administration continues and conducts a full review on JROTC at this point? Or are there any other directions that you may have? So we're bringing this information back. Do you have any questions? And then what direction do you have for the administration regarding JROTC?
I've got a couple of questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but can't we go into a closed session to discuss security? I thought at one time, so
Yeah, we've done.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing when we were talking about that. I had to close that.
So
We can still have a workshop on the 24th, but when we get to the point at which we're going to discuss security.
Then we'll go into closed session.
Yeah, and I think specifically if it's, like when you're thinking about the military doesn't, they might give a big picture. If they had something that was going to jeopardize safety, obviously they wouldn't put that out in the open. But I think the conversation that we're having, I would love it to be out in the open where everybody can hear what we're talking about.
Well, again, I don't have a problem there, but again, I thought, so I like the idea of doing that and then going into closed session for more specifics.
If needed.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Okay.
certainly something we can do.
Sure.
And then the next thing is, I know you're talking about a survey for ROTC. Does the other new curriculum go out with surveys as well?
Yeah, we're not requesting a survey.
Well, I know, but that is one of the things. I thought you said the next process would be, or the next step would be.
So Ms. Mosier, do you mind if there's a process for any new course that they have to go through. There are certain questions that have to get answered. It's kind of a robust process for any course. So what the question is do you want us to put JROTC through the exact same process that every other idea goes through? That's kind of our request.
But is that a survey like the last survey that went out?
In 2018, I understand there was a survey. That's not
Yes.
I don't think that's what we're looking for.
What kind of survey would it be then?
We're not
Who does it
doing,
go to?
we're not requesting a survey.
I thought you said though each new curriculum requires,
You have to walk through, there's a process, it's a district process for reviewing course, and it just includes it's the vetting process for considering a course for any new course for the district. So that it would be the same process. It's not a survey.
well, again, I mean, I think all of the new ideas should go through the same process. So everything is across the board.
Sure.
But again, I don't want to see one having to go out with a survey and the other one doesn't.
Right. It would be the same process, and that's what we're really asking here.
Okay.
It's coming. It's obviously it's a little bit different. It's coming from a different spot than some of the others, and but yes, it would be the same process as it would be for any other new course.
Okay.
Questions, thoughts, direction for administration?
What's the level of interest in the program?
So we do have, obviously, we have JROTC is available to our students as part of the consortium in the county. Howell hosts the JROTC program for the county. They have 115 people in that program. Am I correct in that number? They have 115 people in that program, and I believe that Brighton has
We have one student currently.
one.
Prior year, there was one student in the year before that. And what branches in Howell? Air Force. Air Force, okay.
So as far as other students that are interested, we've not had students asking us for it, but that doesn't mean.
We haven't had any students who have been declined. We've not had any students who
I've not. I don't-
asked to get in and have not been able to.
I shouldn't say that. There is sometimes protocol for students who are, selected into the program. There could be that. So I don't want to say a student hasn't, but they haven't been declined because there hasn't been space. Is that?
Yeah, we verified there is space in Howell if more students, they're not being turned away.
Is that in our curriculum guide?
In our curriculum guide? That's a good question. I'll have to check that for you. I
I'd
would
suggest
assume it should be, but
I'd suggest it's not. But let's check.
What was that question?
If the JROTC program Air Force transfer course in Howell is even in the curriculum guide.
I'll
So
pull it up
look
while
at
we're
that
talking.
real quick. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's take a
You're gonna
look.
look it up?
Before we move forward, I'd like to see if that's in there.
At the very end of it is where all the consortium classes.
Yeah, I mean, consortium, it's considered part of the consortium, right? So,
Should be,
yeah, so it
should
would
be,
be
just like auto, just like,
Right.
yeah.
culinary, it should be the same.
Right.
And while Ms. Mosier, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions in the interim, but while Ms. Mosier is looking for that information that Mr. Conlon requested, is the process, my understanding, when we talked about this the last meeting, or maybe a couple of meetings ago, was that there was a there was the prospect that this might, if it were pursued, to be looked at as a possible after-school or like a 0 hour versus and offering it as a course during, the typical day. Is the process different? Is there a different process for looking at courses that will be offered during the school day that might conflict with what a student would be able to take for other classes versus offering a course that would be a 0 hour or 7th hour?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in every elective, there's only 6 choices that a student gets. So, they're obviously, if it's during the school day, if they're choosing this, they're not choosing something else. So
they would not be able to do a 7th hour in addition to a traditional 6-hour school day. Is that right?
So I mean, it really depends. I mean, I think you could make that option and to allow students to take a 7th course.
We approved 7th hour.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
We approved the 7th hour.
So-
0 hour.
The one thing that in the research on this that we came across, and I know I talked about it before, that I think that being flexible with the scheduling would be really important to have a chance to, to get any students into this. The one thing that we found, this was from JROTC, it says, after hour and 0 hour option. JROTC is like other academic courses in that it's conducted within normal school hours. It is not to be conducted before or after hours or during lunch break. 0 hour classes may be taught to increase JROTC enrollment by giving students additional opportunities to take the class. However, JROTC should only be offered in this way if other classes in the high school are offered in the same manner. And I believe that was right from their manual. So that was their concern about doing that flexible option I was talking about. That was their feedback. So I think they're recommending that it be during a traditional school day primarily.
So then it would take the slot of some other class.
It is not in the curriculum.
I assumed it wasn't. Now, here's the situation. We have a major disagreement on who brings classes forward in programs. Under our bylaws, the Board of Education is responsible for curriculum and curriculum adoption. Now, I have a BPPO 2250 that's on this. It says school and staff and student body make the recommendations for new courses. Since when? I've got our bylaws right here. Very clearly states it's the Board of Education's responsibility to adopt curriculum. So now I have something in writing from my school that says the board has nothing to do with curriculum adoption. So we need to fix that first. So I'd like to pass this down and have you read it. And then have you read what you wrote to the board members.
So the 2250 is a board policy, not our
I just
policy.
want those
Just-
2 things straightened out right now. Make it clear.
Well, I don't understand.
Well, here's what happened. And borrow yours. No. In the statement written to the board, it claims that we have our statement, this statement right here. It's in your board packet. Oh, okay. It's regarding the notifying all policies, and it also talks about, hang on, where's one about ROTC? Hang on, hold on. Specifically about ROTC. Top heading. Down the bottom, it talks about new course process. It says school staff and student body make the recommendations for new course offerings. Now, that's false
Well, how's that false?
because the policies don't say that.
Well, the policies for us, we as a board adopt the curriculum.
That's right.
But this is, the recommendation that they're referring to is not adoption. They're saying, so students, in fact, I think, as was discussed by Ms. Mosier last time, the courses that were up for approval in part came from the request from students. Is
Well,
that
that's a good
correct?
thing. That's part of it. That's
Well,
part of
that's
it.
not, it's not saying it's exclusive.
Well, it says right here in this new course process, it leaves no opening. It says school staff and student body make the recommendations for new course offerings per board policy PO 2250. Now, the one I sent down has something totally different on it than that.
Yeah.
I do.
Here's why,
But
Roger.
but
Just-
here's the point that Dr. Allah is saying is, does the board want the administration to move forward with, in other words, are we recommending,
I understand.
so he's saying we have the authority to do that. So I don't know.
Well, we do, but here's the problem. In this written directive, it says we don't, and it doesn't need, they don't need,
We don't have
it says right here, school and staff. What does that say?
Where
that
does it,
decision?
Mr. Conley, where does it say that the board does not have the authority to make recommendations?
It just says that's who recommends it. Now, here's how I read it. Yes, please.
The school staff and student body make recommendations.
Right.
For the new course. Then it comes to us
Correct.
for a yea or nay.
But here's the
So I
problem.
think
Nobody on
that's
this
the
board
difference.
develops curriculum. No one here has developed anything. Under state statute, we're supposed to bring curriculum to our schools with our experience in this community to develop what we believe the students should have. No one here has ever brought a class to this school.
That's not accurate.
Who's brought a class to school and had it adopted as curriculum? Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so what does that board policy say?
No, what's not accurate is that it's our obligation to bring curriculum forward.
I never said it was an obligation. I said it's part of your job as a board member to make offerings and to bring
Sounds
things.
obligation to me.
It is, well.
Okay,
if
the
you read-
question,
if
the
you-
question, the question that is before the board is, are we as a board going to direct the administration to move forward with conducting the review process to, just as Mr. Trombley pointed out.
We don't need to do a review
Let
process.
me finish. To go through the process of identifying whether that's going to be a new course offer. I mean, that's the question that he's asking the board for feedback.
And my concern is we don't need it because we as a board can just say to do it. We don't have to ask anybody anything. Here it is, decisions of the use of experimental or pilot programs, including staffing, use of technology, provisions of technology, impact individual staff members in the bargaining unit. We're in a position to say what we want to do. We don't have to ask permission.
That's
You-
where-
No, but hold on. So in this is a decision that has big bearing because over the years, this has been put off, and put off. The JROTC program has been flown in front of me that you've offered it to our students. You haven't offered it to our students. And I'm not real happy about it. We don't have an accurate survey of how many kids would be signed up because it wasn't in the curriculum guide like I was told it would be. Now, that's incorrect.
So if I may,
Please.
I think what you're saying is, tell me if I'm right or wrong, you want to put it in curriculum to see who wants it. In other words, list it as a program.
That's correct.
And then if they don't sign up for it, there's nothing we can do about that. But
Ken,
I
hold
mean,
on
like
for a
any
minute.
other curriculum, if we don't get enough people
Right.
signed up for it, we wouldn't be able to continue through it.
But 2 years ago, when we talked about it, it's supposed to have been put in the curriculum just for that particular
I
reason.
understand.
But it wasn't.
I understand.
Again, that's not just this program. Go back to 2010, 11. I can give you the whole long history,
No, I remember there was an issue then.
all the way up. So
So-
students on behalf of programs have been denied to our students by
So-
this particular process. It has to stop.
All right, so I think it's a process issue that we're talking about, so.
It didn't happen the way it was supposed
I
to.
understand.
Again,
And that's what he's asking.
listen,
That's
the
board's
robotics
board
team was at
to-
2 kids.
We're not
6
talking
months
about
ago.
robotics.
I will
We're
switch
talking
back.
about
I can
JROTC.
switch whatever I want. It went from 80 kids to 2. Until Bill and I showed up with the superintendent. Let's be honest. This is awful. This is awful.
John, so.
It's awful.
So the question
I
is,
understand. Moving forward on it, do we want to recommend that they put it on the curriculum to see how many people will sign up? Is that what you're asking me to do?
I say just
It
do the
wasn't
program.
done before, I get that.
Under the emergency situation we're in, we are in a pandemic, trying to get out of it. As soon as we try to get out of it, we get hit again and hit again and hit again. I'm asking for help for these kids that need extra help. There's millions of dollars out there, millions, to help them. And we sit here holding the purse strings and not willing to invest that money to help those kids. So that's what I'm asking for. Make the investment, give the kids a chance, put it in place, and let's see what happens. And make it 0, 7th, make it 5th hour. If the ROTC Army doesn't want to do it, they can put it in writing what they're willing to do from our school, what they can do, and make it a 0 and 7th hour. It's credit bearing. They get credit for physical education. They get credit for math. These kids can graduate a year early if they want to. They can go to early college. Now, why wouldn't people want that to happen for these students? Everybody answer that question. Does anybody know? I know why.
No.
Okay.
You
but
know that I think this is a great permit, but the problem is we can't set up a program and have one kid there. They won't even come and teach you.
There'll be a lot more than one.
Okay, well,
We
there's
have-
only one way to really find that out.
There's a directive to help the lower 10% with part of this funding. Is that correct? Mike, I know you're not listening, but
Are you talking about if you want to be funded?
yeah.
So there's
from the ROTC,
two different ways. One of them we're not going to qualify for.
Correct.
The other one we basically go at it alone, and that would be the option that Brighton would be doing, not the funded one.
Which is but don't we have federal money available to help these kids out of this emergency pandemic?
In other words, is there COVID money to fund this?
So yes, absolutely. There's dollars and we can make whatever choices. There can be different choices. Absolutely. Again, all I'm looking for is, do we want us to move forward on this? I know
They need to know how much it's going to cost and if the district can afford to spend it. My point is the money's
you
there.
have it's, $250,000 in the first year is in that packet, I think.
Who's paying for it though? Is the federal government going to pay for it? Do we have to take it out of the general fund? They can't make decisions and spend $250,000. Is the federal government going to give us the first $250,000?
So this likely would not qualify for the, probably the ESSER $3 or the equalization money. Probably wouldn't there.
Those dollars are targeted, they'd have to be specifically for only certain groups of kids. So in order to offer it to the entire high school, you wouldn't be able to use those targeted dollars. You'd just be taking this out of the general. Is there money to do that?
So even though we're trying to help the 10% that are trying to get themselves to school every day.
Yeah, because it's so targeted.
So we'll just leave them all at home.
Can't guarantee
I
that
know.
those 2%.
But setting dollars aside, let's just set the dollars aside because I think the dollars are important, but let's say if it's important, you're going to invest in it. That's what's going to happen, right? And so there's really two things here. And I know it sounds like it's contentious here, but I think that there's a lot of agreement on this. I was surprised to hear that it wasn't in the program of studies. I'll be honest with you. That's
Why did I have to figure out again?
well,
Why am I the police officer?
I don't know.
When did you find out about this?
Just now.
Right.
I assumed it wasn't when she said there's one student. Roger, we had the initial rollout with 4 kids. The first group of kids, the first kid wound up in West Point, Roger, come on. Give it a break.
So-
I'm asking a question.
nobody even knew.
There's nothing to be a break. I'm asking when you learned.
I'm just-
When you learned, because
Just now.
you're trying to get the information. That's
Just
all.
now.
Because if you learn about it sooner,
No.
you share it.
So again, there's so much value to it. And I think there's a lot of support for JROTC, our kids going into ROTC, West Point, all those. I think there's a lot of support with that. The question mark for me, and I'm just going to throw this out there, the big question mark for me is, will we have enough students to sustain a robust program? And that is the big one here. The program in Howell has 115 students in it. And as you read through this, they're running them as all-day programs. For us, let's say we had a classroom, it's going to be 1 hour. Who are we going to get to teach 1 hour or one block of a class versus a full day? So there's just little nuances like that add questions. If we have an advertised Howell, are there kids that would go to Howell? Is it a transportation issue? Do we help them with transportation? Because Howell has plenty of spaces. They have an established program. Do we go that route to where we get more kids to go and take part of the consortium offering that's already there, that's already top notch, already has staffing and all that stuff? Or do we need to create our own? And those are the questions I'm asking.
But that was the whole idea when we started doing with Howell. The whole idea was to develop the program and get the opportunities for students, and it was shut down and you guys didn't know it. Okay, I didn't know it. I was gone for 2 years. The issue is, and I'm not happy about it, I am absolutely not happy. Most unhappy I've been since I've been here on the board this year. Okay, last year too. So anyway, the idea is that this is ridiculous, but this is something that is broken in the system. So who didn't put it in the curriculum guide? This, under the direction of Gavin Johnson, myself, everybody involved said to have this available for students. Everybody did. We all agreed on it. There was nobody dissented. They said, we just don't know if there's enough people to fund a program at the time. So now you'll never know because you never did the test pilot and never found out that you had 50 kids or 100 kids. And we don't have to have 100 kids. We can do 50. We can do whatever is the best for the students as long as it sustains itself. And, on all these programs so far, every single program that we have worked with as a board that I brought initially a lot of them, are full to capacity.
Look at the auto program.
There's not one failure yet. So what is it with this one that you can't see the dream sheet from somebody that has some vision, which is me and our family and this community, because I was voted by this community and everybody I've talked to, want to do a raise of hands, let's not, who supports the ROTC program. And anybody that I've talked to said, that's a great idea for those kids. Not just people in our boardroom, people out in the public. So it's not anybody, so what are we against by putting it out there? Well, you should talk to your administration. I'd like an answer. Why this was not put in the curriculum guide as it was told to be put in by the directors and by the board. Whoever didn't, go ahead.
Let's say, whose responsibility is it to make sure the curriculum guide is updated?
I'm literally looking into it. Usually it's done at the high school level because of the shared services program. So there's probably a piece between the shared services.
So is it a committee or is it one person or what?
We'll look into that part of it.
I'm literally
and
emailing.
So
So that's gonna
we'll
happen,
check
right?
on
It's
that.
gonna get into the,
So-
guide, okay?
So
The next question here, the question that Dr. Howell is asking is, are we authorizing him, the administration, to move forward with the JROTC program to review, just as Mr. Trombley asked the question, that it shouldn't be treated any differently than any, whether it's, we're not asking for additional surveys or anything beyond what is the normal process. Are we sufficiently interested enough from a basic standpoint of the information we have to move forward with the next step to investigate the potential to adopt that as a new curriculum? That's the question that's being asked. So what?
if I could just throw, oh, go ahead, Dr.
One of
Kraft.
the things, I think we have to be really careful here too, when we look at funding. One of the things we said is just looking at the lower 10%. I disagree with that. I think that it would appeal to all. I do not think it would only appeal to the lower 10%. I think that's shortchanging the program, first of all.
No, not at all. The idea is that we're approaching the lower 10% as well as anybody else who wants to sign up. And in the funding process, if we are approaching the lower 10% and let's say the top 5% sign up as well, that's wonderful. We're not saying you can't come. The idea is this would be
That's
a
what the
program
funding is
everybody.
for though. So,
But
so
if this
I
helps-
was,
but if
I
you get
was
funding for 10
speaking,
people-
I was speaking.
I got what you're saying.
So it's not that I'm
Understood.
against the program. I think it's just that we need to make sure that we see we have it's viable. We want to make sure that we have the students that will take it. It's one thing to have a teacher develop a curriculum for a course. They can put it in the program. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything for a teacher to put a course in the program and see if it runs. We don't get enough people to take it. It doesn't run. It hasn't cost anything. This program has, what is it? We said $250,000 the first year it's going to run, which I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it because of that. We have a cost. We have to be fiscally responsible when we make that decision to run it. That's what I want to make sure we're doing. So we have to make sure we're following the process.
But I think that's right. That's included as part of that process of analyzing all of the factors, right? I mean, it's all-
It is. Can I just throw one thing out there? So I really, in this conversation, I don't hear anybody saying no, that we don't want JROTC. I think that seems to be a consensus, that we want our students to have an opportunity. So, and then finding out that we haven't done a good job, it sounds like we haven't been particularly effective in advertising the option that currently exists. I think you have two different options here. One option is to go down this pathway and create a new localized program here where we create it from the ground up. When I was in my previous district, we wanted more of our students to take part in CTE courses, and we were in another county and we had a career tech center, and a lot of kids, they didn't know about it. So what we did is we created a plan and we took the students to see the program. Our numbers tripled, and we packed that program every year, but we did the bus trip every year and they got to see it in action. So that might be something to see how many of our students would go to Howell to take part in that established program if we did a better job and made a stronger commitment to exposing them to that program. And I know that in the CTE classes, they talked about having counselors seeing some of the different programs, but maybe we need to do some of those similar things for students to be able to see what some of the options are outside of Brighton.
I have news. Your counselors, our counselors, often don't give our children very good direction. So I can share with you numerous times, including even tell them, don't become a teacher, it doesn't pay enough. We're teaching teacher cadets and these kids are awesome. So I get firsthand on it. So in this, back to why this isn't in the curriculum, so we could make a decision tonight that would be more talented. It pushes it down the road again. And my opinion will hold, and I think, and I'll hold everybody responsible to this, that there are students today that can benefit from this program. They may not be in your household, they may be in somebody else's, but those students could truly get a launch pad from this versus not. So in that, my suggestion would be, is you put it in the curriculum guide for next year, advertise it, and see how many people sign up for next year. Currently, though, second semester's coming. Right now, it should be advertised at the high school. I don't know how it's on. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if they can take a half-year student. It should be advertised immediately in our school system. So if there's any students that want to sign up, or this opportunity would help them, that they know there's 40 seats available in Howell's program. So I think they can have up to 150. Is that correct? Do we know?
There's plenty of seats.
Okay, and they have 100 and some students. So maybe second semester, the students could get started right now to determine what's going to happen and help them. Because I'm serious about this pandemic stuff. I've seen what it is done to families. We are in a crisis mode to do our best to offer more opportunities for students. And that would, to me, would include more gym classes, run the kids around school, take them outside. I went to the Scranton Middle School. This has something to do with this, Roger. I went to the Scranton Middle School working on some other stuff, and we got a flag put up in the library and some other stuff that was just all happened real quickly in like 20 minutes. It was great. So, but I go in there, and in the gymnasium, all the kids are lined up, sitting side by side, shoulder to shoulder in the morning. Every one of them. They didn't have an inch separation between them. And then I go in the cafeteria, it was the same thing. Well, they'd be way better off doing something else than sitting next to each other like that, especially with this situation we got going. I'm telling you, the doors weren't open on the other end of the gym. It's all they could do to contain the kids because they can't be running around everywhere. I don't know if that's an issue with the teacher contracts. I don't know if they don't have a home room now when they get to school. They either were standing outside. Ken knows more about it. They're in the football field, and then they moved them inside because it's cold outside. Whatever's going on. But I mean, we have situations that we could be doing stuff. So there's more things to do than what we see. I was just there doing something else. Actually, I was working on this right here. This will come up in our safety. So we're on to
bringing it
that.
back to the JROTC program.
We need it.
I think I think everyone is in agreement that there's a baseline support to further explore this. The question is, obviously, there's the follow-up with respect to the Howell program, then adding it into, our existing information so that our students realize that is available. I think that's going to happen. I think that the idea of promoting that as an opportunity is something that also should be done. I think everyone agrees with that. And you mentioned, Dr. Outlaw, that Brandon, when there was the promotion of the CTE programs, did you say you bus students to see it? I think that would be something that we could promote to say, look, if you're interested, if anyone may be interested, we're going to offer, February 3rd or whatever the date is, and we'll bus students that may be interested, and they can see.
The best recruiters are the people that are actually teaching the class.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And if you tell me to advertise
I'm good with all that. I think
cybersecurity,
it's a great idea. In fact, we could take our 8th graders, because the reality is that we could take our 8th graders and move them up and take them with us on that trip and advertise at the middle school level and our 9th and 10th grade, because the program, you don't have to have all 4 years in Brighton High School and ROTC. You can do 2 years or 3 years, and there's no requirement. I did bring my books, one of the texts. I mean, this has everything in it that you want these kids to know. It's all in here. It sits right here. It talks about your country, talks about your constitution, talks about your foundation, talks about why to stay on the right track, because it's out there for you if you want to earn it. It's all in there. It makes total sense to me. It's not like we have to design it either. It's so laid out. It's been taught over 100 years.
So
For us to get curriculum like
I'm in
that.
agreement of moving this thing forward and getting kids over there to look at the program. How soon can that take place?
I think that we need to put our heads together about what that target audience is, because I think John brings up a really good point about where, is it younger kids? Do we do it by choice? Like having kids sign up. So if we could put that together, I'd love to get together with the team and figure out what that target audience is. And then I think we could do it probably soon. We want to communicate with Howell about, we don't want to go and see them on a light day. We want to go when they're doing drill and fun stuff and exciting things that are going to get kids interested.
But again, so this doesn't continue to get pushed down the road. When are you anticipating this could happen? Let me ask you that question.
I'll say we need to do it before course selections.
Which is when?
Course selections is at the end of February. So we could probably start, right at the end of February, beginning of March. So maybe we do it, end of January, beginning of February. Obviously, we haven't even spoken to people.
Right, I understand
but let's try to do it as soon as possible.
Here's the
Okay,
other thing.
let's do it.
There's no reason we can't use our summer stuff and summer school programs through our community ed. There's no reason we can't start it now and then turn it into a school program. So I'd like you to explore the community ed option where we could start to offer it during summer and when the kids get out of school for something to keep them busy this summer.
Okay.
And then we can then develop a program, then the students, it's just no different than athletics and having a good baseball team. Okay, this would be our ROTC offering for our community, which would be countywide, because our program then would be offered countywide. And that's really what this would be also. So students could come to our school for the Army Junior ROTC. So back to developing things. If we want to develop something, we can. If we don't want to develop something, like at this point we've gotten to, we didn't. But I believe going forward, if we take that approach, and that comes to anybody's ideas that has ideas or things that think would help students, I'm open-minded to anything to talk about it, sort it out and see. But during the situation and the situation people are in, like I said, don't think about your own house. You got to put yourself in somebody else's kitchen table and understand things aren't always like they are in your house. And that's what we're here to do.
But I think we're all in agreement right now to move this forward, right?
I'm good. I just
So let's move it
But I want to
forward.
encourage others though to do the same.
So
Anybody else?
I think we have what we need. Our first step is going to be that. And I'll get back to the board before Friday with just follow up on what that target group is. We'll reach out and we'll try to set something up and we'll get back with you shortly. Maybe we can give you an update at that 24th. If we do a work session, we can give you an update on where it's at. And
I appreciate the board's patience on it. I think it's
no,
very
and Mr. Conley, I think, I think you bring up a really good point. And, this is, I've been here for about a year and a half and, we're bringing up other points and things, but we appreciate things like noticing in the course selections guide and things. And those are important pieces. So thank you for bringing that forward. And I think everybody here on the board, wants the students to be able to have that choice, to be able to have, you can't have the choice if it's not in front of you. So we're going to make that happen. And so thank you for bringing it forward and we'll get back with y'all shortly.
Yeah. Can I put this in our board packet for today so it goes as record, becomes printed record regarding the responsibilities of the school board and our jobs as well? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the direction.
All right, thank you, Dr. Otwell. That moves us to the next item on our agenda, which is the organizational matters. Item A, setting dates, times, and locations of meetings. Do we have a motion with regard to that issue?
So moved.
By Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Stahl. And so the motion is to call for regular Board of Education meetings at 7 p.m. in the boardroom and back at this location for the dates that are set forth on page 5 of the packet. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next item is the depositories. And as presented, it's to designate the following banks as depository funds for the Brighton area schools: Comerica Bank, My Class, and the State Bank. We have a motion. By Ms. Mitchell, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next item is the depositories. And signatures.
C. We're on C.
B is, I didn't, let's see.
So on the
Just-
top of page
I'm sorry,
6.
Signatories,
Yep.
C. The next item is for the organizational matter signatory C. There are two motions that are presented for the board's consideration. The first one is that in accordance with the Michigan General School Laws for general powers school districts, the secretary is authorized to draw and sign orders upon the treasurer for all monies to be distributed from the general fund, special revenue funds, all debt retirement funds, capital projects, custodial funds, and further that such order be countersigned by the president of the Board of Education. We have a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stahl,
Board.
supported by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Next one is the motion that is presented for the board's consideration is that the following personnel be designated signatories for the following funds. Matthew S. Outlaw, Superintendent of Schools, and/or Michael A. Ingleter, Assistant Superintendent for Finance, and/or Elizabeth Patterson, Director of Accounting, Certificates of Deposit, Savings Accounts, all internal accounts, payroll accounts, payable accounts, money market accounts, wire transfer of funds, and automated clearinghouse transfer of funds. And John Thompson, Athletic Director, Athletic Officials, Entry Fee Accounts. Do we have a motion? Moved by Dr. Krebs. Support by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Mr. Trombley?
are there supposed to be two signatures in regards to that? Or can just one of the persons do it?
There's two.
What's that?
There's two on the checks.
Does that include John Thompson's account?
John Thompson's our single signer, but all of his stuff is run and then reconciled in our department.
But his account doesn't take two people.
No, it does not.
Why not when it's grouped in this grouping?
It's just a convenience factor. That's the only reason we actually have an athletics account separate, is because you often have to write checks for officials and that.
And by the way, too, could you tell me how much is in that athletic account?
Only as much as we transfer into it as necessary.
So you transfer
Yeah.
that, like gate money and things like that, don't go into that
They-
account
it
directly.
does
It all
not.
transfers through you.
No, that, all of the gate money is deposited separately on a nightly basis.
And then it's transferred through you into that account.
That's correct.
And
Yeah, we-
typically, how much is in that account is normally carried in there?
Less than $10,000.
Less than 10,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty small.
But the check writing authority is 3 million.
No, that's on the other piece of it.
Okay, good. All right,
Yeah,
that's not
I
his.
mean,
Okay.
he wouldn't be able to write a check for 3 million.
So what's his maximum you can write a check for?
As much as is in the account.
Account, but
Okay,
it wouldn't.
gotcha.
Up to $10,000, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So-
It's rarely
Doesn't sound like
even,
a problem.
it's rarely even that much in there. I mean,
Okay.
it's-
Just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's single signature for 3 million.
thank you.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. Moves us to item D, the authorization to transfer funds. The motion that's been presented for the board's consideration is that the following employees are authorized to transfer automated clearinghouse funds subject to the listed limitations. All funds, unlimited authority, superintendent and assistant superintendent for finance, and all funds, $3 million limit, director of accounting. Do we have a motion? Supported
Support.
by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. Next item is the treasurer bond, motion that's presented for the board's consideration. The treasurer of the Board of Education is not involved in the handling of money, and therefore it is not necessary to provide a treasurer bond. We have a motion. Moved by Dr. Krebs, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next item is the legal matters. The motion that's been presented for the board's consideration is to retain the services of Trune Law Firm. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell. Support by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it possible to get a quote from another law firm and find somebody else? Have we ever got a comparison quote for rates and fees? And have we put it out for bid?
I know we have, once since I've been on the board, they've done that.
They
I don't
can't-
know if it's been any since, but I remember at one time we did do that.
can be done. Typically, boards tend to stay with a law firm just for historical, past history, because the law firm has been involved in much of that stuff over the years and maintains files on all of that stuff, but that's the board's prerogative to do so.
All right.
Rates are fairly stable. Having come in from outside, they're pretty common. And so you're not going to find a lot of savings by moving somewhere else. Just throwing that up. But yes,
Well, and I add a couple of things. One, some of the basic legal feedback that we as a board look to, we go to MASB, which provides legal services and provides guidance on legal issues through their legal counsel, which is a service that we get as part of our membership through the MASB. So that's utilized to help minimize our costs. So Troon is, we go to Troon on an as-needed basis. I will say that we had 3 arbitrations against the district in the last year that were represented by Troon, and the district won all 3 of them through Troon's representation. So, certainly the quality of the representation has been there as well.
The reason I bring it up is that Troon was the law firm that handled the Sheboygan case for the quarantine issues. And so it appears that a lot of the schools use the same attorneys. And the results in the Sheboygan case were clear that the quarantines were illegal. And they had to cease and desist in that school district. So we never heard that. So I just think there's other people out there that do the same job. And I'm sure that Truan does a lot is there any other school attorneys that do schools specifically besides Truan? Do they exist?
They're Hannigan.
they do. There's, Miller Jackson that used to be with Lusk Albertson. There's a whole bunch of ones out there. The one thing I will say is Mr. Meyer talked about specifically Ray Davis. I would hate to lose the services that we got there. And I mean, he represented this district, I will just say, very well over the past year and a half on the labor side.
And the Sheboygan case, the target of the Sheboygan case was the county health department, because they were enforcing quarantine orders without having all of their I's dotted and their T's crossed. It wasn't the school district. The school district was a necessary party. So the outcome of that case certainly had no bearing on the effectiveness of the representation by the Truman law firm of the school district.
And Truman is very well respected. Chris Imarino is the bond counsel through Truman, is one of the most respected, bond attorneys in, anywhere.
Right.
And
again,
so they have some great people.
I would trust that's totally factual. The problem was, though, and I understand your situation with the case, Roger, wasn't that they didn't handle the school stuff, because it was totally put out. They went after the health department. I saw that. But they were fully aware of the results of that case. That's the problem. They were fully aware of the legal position in the circuit court level regarding quarantining of students. That's the issue that didn't, I felt, get transferred to us at a level that, realizing each circuit has its own bubble that it works in. Just because it happened in Sheboygan doesn't mean it's the same law in Livingston County. But I would suggest that it is, and we never do that. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
all those in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Nay.
Any nays?
Nay.
All right, that passes 5-1. And that moves us, that concludes the organizational matters and moves us to the next item on our agenda, which is for action. Item A, the minutes of December 13, 2021. We have a motion. Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next item, B, Human Resources Report. Mr. Staley's not here. Dr. Agua?
Yep. The only thing on it, we had a resignation of one employee from Scranton, and that's the only thing that's on our agenda. So they're in the process of replacing that individual.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the resignation.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Mr.
Why are they resigning?
They took a position in another district closer to their home.
Okay, thank you.
Can we approve the resignation? I thought we decided that we didn't. That wasn't ours to approve. Did we not, I mean,
I think it's just the idea was that it was going to be to approve the human resource report as presented, but I think,
a report, not the resignation.
right, I think the resolution that you just did works fine for tonight.
Okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0.
I do miss knowing how many years service and that kind of stuff. Is there a way to get that information to us when this happens without changing what we're doing? 'Cause I mean.
You mean the people that leave?
People that have been with us for 20, 30 years, it's always nice to know.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it's retirement. I think retirement is the one that really, we celebrate as retirement. When somebody takes a job elsewhere,
Knowing that number sometimes can help you figure out why and things like that, that's all.
sure.
Okay. All right, that moves us to item C, the Neola policy, second reading. Dr. Outlaw, do you want to address that?
Sure. I know this has come forward at a few of the meetings. And at the last meeting, the decision was to table this, to break out each policy individually for a vote. And we've done that. We have that summary sheet that you walk through. The policies are here. And so our request is to, maybe we go each one and then ask questions that board members may have on each one. But it's set up to go one after another.
So I think just for ease of discussion, it'd be better to take them one by one because that's the way the structure.
Sounds great.
In the packet as well. So the first one is for the board's consideration is to approve Neola policy 0100 as presented. We have a motion. Moved by Dr. Krebs. Support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion?
Yeah, before we get too far into this, again, I think I've voiced my opinion in the past. I'm not a big fan of Neola. And we've had them here for 22 years. I certainly think that we, as a school board, could go out and look for another company that does this. I know we just heard about how good Troon represented people from a law standpoint. I know Troon does this service. I know there's other companies that offer the same service. I would like to see us go out and, whether it's the policy committee or who it is, to go out, interview, see what these other firms have to offer us in regards to their services and bring it back to the board for a vote and not necessarily lock into Neola right now. And again, I don't know how time sensitive these policies are, but I would like to see something change in regards to Neola. And again, I in a lot of the things that they've come back with, a lot of their comments that we adopt just because it's Neola says so, I don't think is necessarily correct.
Give me an example of a policy that you think Neola was wrong. Do you have a policy?
Well, I can tell you that I believe Neola, in my opinion, has a tendency to follow the big picture. In other words, when Obama was president, they went back and changed a lot of their policies. And then when Trump became president, they went back and changed a lot of their policies. And it's not because the law had changed, but it's because of, I believe, the perception and the way the country was moving and those kinds of things. And again, people could think I'm crazy, whatever, but I certainly think if you go back and look at past history, you'll see that. And I don't know, Dr. Outlaw, have you noticed that, or have you seen that, or have you used other companies?
You know what? I think it was what 2000? Is that when they said that? That's what I had heard, that it started. I was in I think I was in Grosse Pointe at the time when we made that transition, and Neola was the only ones. They were the founders of this. Since then, now there are competitors, and several of the law firms have their own. So I think it might be worthwhile to have Mr. Scaling just make a couple calls around to see what that might look like. I know a lot of the districts in Oakland County moved away from Neola, and
Do you know why?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think they believe that they might get better service by connecting to ones that had been done by like a specific law firm that they had relationships with. Because, they had their attorneys that were, so let's say if it was Troon, for example. Well, Troon's our attorney, and then they know the Troon policies better than they would Neola. So those are some of the editorial things. But I think having Mr. Scaling maybe look at what that process might look like and then share that information with the board. Is there a vetting process? What does that entail? Is it a 6-month process of meetings, or is it how much effort does it take on the part of the board in order to make that transition? So I'd love to be able to do that vetting and provide that information back to the board if you're okay with that.
And let me ask you, in your opinion, have you seen Neola switch back and forth per the?
Yeah, I mean, as I think your description is a good one, that a lot of times things like executive orders and some of the laws, they are constantly adjusting to laws. For example, this first policy that you're going to vote on here today, they're revising it because the previous, voting remotely was up until December 31st was permitted if you were actively serving in the military and you could not make it, or 2, if you had a medical condition that prohibited you from being there. Well, that second one is no longer allowed in the law, so they have to revise the policy. So most of the policies are adjusting to the ebbs and flows of legislation.
I was pretty good with that when I was on the MSP, Government Relations Committee. But a lot of that stuff will come to us then, at that committee, showing us that a senator, a representative, you name it, had proposed a new law. If it passed, then that would directly affect policy. That particular one, I was sitting there for that one, because that most recently changed about a year ago. So yeah, our government that we elect in our states makes these new laws, changes some of them for the good, some of them for the bad, and then they do directly affect these policies. I also would just like to say, I'm actually glad this is happening, because prior to my second year on the school board, we just kind of would take their advice and just say yes to the whole thing and let it go through. It was the result of some volunteers that dug into it that got all this stuff moving and brought our attention to it, maybe, let's say. And I mean, so we're probably, it's about time we probably looked at it a little harder. There was a time where we just rubber stamped it because, oh yeah, Noah said do it, we do it. That was how it used to be.
So, yeah, I mean, I would support, having Dr. Ola, Mr. Scaling take a look and see what other options. It's certainly worth exploring. I will say, one of the things that you just have to appreciate, and I certainly, understand where you're coming from, Mr. Trombley, that it seemed like there were certain policies during Obama was president and they switched when Trump became president. Part of that isn't necessarily an appropriate criticism of Neola or any other
I just said it was
organization
my
that does it.
opinion.
But for example, like, with the Department of Education, and the Department of Education promulgates the Title IX regulations. The Title IX regulations under Obama were vastly different than when Trump became president and the Department of Education implemented new Title IX policies. And now they're going to be moving in a different direction, and already have moved, but started moving in a different direction under President Biden. So unfortunately, because you get these significantly different viewpoints of how these regulations are to be adopted and implemented, how they affect policy, their hands are tied. I mean, it's coming from, you may not like it, but ultimately there is going to be those swings particularly when you get issues that tend to be more politicized. But having said that, I think it's certainly worth revisiting, take a look at, is there another game out there, somebody else out there that we'd be happy with?
And I know we don't have to bid professional services, but I don't think this has ever even been put out for bid.
Probably not.
We'll gather that information and get back to you.
And the other thing, though, don't forget, they are providing the service that we have to have, because we can't follow all the laws that change.
Right.
So, I mean, that's you know.
You
so-
need to have somebody doing
Yeah,
this.
this
You
isn't something we're
cannot
not
do
doing
this. This is
all
a
the
full-time,
time.
this is a full-time job.
Yeah, this is, so, in fairness, so.
Neola is the most popular. I would say the majority in the state of Michigan use Neola. Their representatives have been very professional. Their service has been, but the people that they send in to meet with us, they're very professional. They listen, they explain, they gather information. I know they work closely with Ms. Ackermite and getting things up and whatnot. So I would just say that they've done their job very well.
I'm not questioning the representatives and those people.
Absolutely.
I'm questioning
But
it as a whole.
But I think looking at services and seeing what other options are out there, I think is a good,
Okay.
good thing to look into.
Is it common for districts to use the same law firm for their policies too? Have you-
So I'm not 100% sure, but I'd venture to guess that would be the case, but I'm not 100% sure in all of those.
Sorry, Laura, I didn't hear your question.
I was just wondering if it's common for districts to use the same law firm as, for the policies too.
I couldn't imagine Shroon wanting to get into this business if they couldn't piggyback off their law customers already.
Right.
So Troon does it, Troon does policies?
Troon is one of the different people, yeah. A lot of school districts, you have multiple, like in my previous district, we used Lusk Albertson for special education and labor because we work with Bill Albertson and then, Robert Lusk, they're the best. And then we worked with Clark Hill on contract because they were the best. And so sometimes people have multiple, retainer clients. So, but likely it would be one of their primary contact probably is who they're going to use.
I mean, these are supposed to be a direct reflection of the law that was passed to get them there. So
Sure.
I guess that's the real question. Who do we trust to review it? And are they doing their job right? Because we really can't change the law. We all know that. If it comes from
Right.
our state education, that's what we're going to have to do. But whether or not it's slanted, if you will. to
And
use
some of the
term,
things
Yeah.
are, some of them are easier, like, okay, we're cleaning up language in this first one, right? But other ones, you'll have 4 or 5 check boxes where there's choice. And that's probably where those are probably the ones that are more controversial is where you're choosing some of the things that were raised tonight. So.
I mean, typically it's, will or shall is what they're changing, but some of this has been some neat phase for sure.
Or like
Right.
the first one, where they changed, the law just changed
Right.
with respect to remote participation. I mean, we have to stay up to date,
Right.
so. All right, any further discussion on 0100?
Not necessarily 0100, just a general comment. Matt, have you been involved in the process before where we've changed, school has changed, a district has changed their policy organization? And what's kind of the timeline for that? I just want some more
So
information.
when I was in Grosse Pointe, I think I'm not sure I don't know if I was a principal or what at the time, but I was part of the team that did a transition, but we went from binders to Neola. And I think they were called something else at that time. That was it was quite a process. It took like 6 months, but I'm not sure that that's the same situation because we already have them uploaded and we kind of have a starting point. So I think it's pretty cumbersome. I would not anticipate that this is going to would be an easy thing to transition to something else. That's probably why most people have stayed and not made that transition. But let's find out. We'll call some districts and find out, what kind of effort that takes. It's a great
Is this one
question.
time sensitive then, Roger, this one we're voting on, this requires because it's for this year, right?
For this year?
Yeah, this online, being online or not, this is right now.
Yeah, it's right now. So, yeah, I mean, so this is an updated version that reflects the change in the law that's.
Yeah, the version we have right now is not aligned with the law currently. So this aligns it with the law.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. All right, the next one that's presented is to approve Neola policy 0167.3 as presented. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, support by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
Is this time sensitive?
I would say no,
Okay,
that it's not time sensitive. I think it was cleanup language. They were adjusting some of the words around, public comments and things like that. But that's the primary purpose of this 167.3.
Right, because there's some case law that was decided recently dealing with issues relating to what would be and would not be permissible to be discussed during the call to the public portion of the meeting, and some of the clarification of what control
this
mechanisms.
is the result.
Pardon me, and
This
this is the result, exactly.
So again, I guess, would we wait until we had this other firm on board for some of these, or do we just, some of these that aren't time sensitive, we still just go ahead?
So I will say this, that if you go out to bid, you do, this is not going to happen. This will be.
Oh, yeah, I can
It'll
imagine.
be 80 degrees outside by the time you're looking at this again. So,
Okay.
so I mean, so it's not going to be anytime soon, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So
I could figure that. Okay.
Okay. All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Mr. Conley? Yes. Mr. Conley, you were an aye?
What's that?
You were an aye? Aye.
Yeah.
That passes 5-1. All right, that moves us to the next one, which is the approval of Neola policy 3120 as presented. Do we have a motion? Moved by Dr. Krebs. Support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion?
So they're pulling out because it was highly qualified, or what, qualified, or weren't there 3 of them?
So, Dr. Owen, Mr. Scaly would normally address, I mean, there is the summary sheet which identifies what, and that's what you're referring to, Mr. Trombley, about the outdated, highly qualified language being
Yes.
deleted.
Yes.
So, as I understand it, that's a change in the nomenclature because of the change in the statutory language. So the
Correct.
statutes don't refer to that language. So this is aligning our policy language with what the new statutory characterizations entail.
Yeah, and this
Is
is,
that correct?
most of this is just cleanup language. They're
Okay.
calling something different. We're aligning what that language, we're modernizing some of the language.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
That passes 5-1. The next one is to approve Neola policy 5114 as presented. Do we have a motion? It says 5114.
Yeah, I think it's wrong.
Okay, so I apologize. The policy itself is 6114, so there was a typo on the. Yeah, so it's Neola policy 6114, which begins on page 24. Okay, we have a motion. Moved by Dr. Krebs, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
And again, is this just language cleanup?
Yeah, this is just a quick change to the CFR at the federal level related to spending of federal funds. It really didn't add a whole lot of anything, but just cleanup language.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
That passes 5-1. The next one is Neola policy 6152. Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
for being allowed to have one.
All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 5-1. The next one is Neola Policy 7450. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell. Support by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
Passes 5-1. The next item is Neola Policy 8310. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
So again, is this just language cleanup or is this something new?
To remain compliant with Michigan law. according to the-
What's that?
It says here, this revision should be adopted in order to remain compliant with Michigan law. So this is to get us in compliance with law.
Right, so you can see the,
Yep.
the green that's been added for confidentiality purposes of students and employees. All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Next item is Neola Policy 8320. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. And do we have any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next item is Neola Policy 8330. As presented, do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. The next one is Neola Policy 7230. As presented, do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Mitchell, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
That passes 5-1. All right, that takes us to the next item for action, item D, new course proposals for 2022-2023. Ms. Mosher, Dr. Allah, who's going to handle this one?
I guess that's me.
I can if you need.
So last time we met, 3 courses were brought in front of you for adoption. They're the 2 STEAM courses in a fashion and design. The STEAM are for Scranton, built off of part of our science curriculum and then going into more of our STEAM programming. And then the fashion design is kind of a program addition into what we currently offer. So those are the 3 courses we're bringing in front of you for approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion? Again,
Has these gone through your process?
Yep, all of these go through a process. So there was curriculum written, it goes through like the building level, and then it comes to our office, and then it's also written with a coach, and then my overseeing of the standards.
And
going
then
on.
is there a committee that votes on these or?
They do that through their building as well.
There is a committee that votes on it. It's Board of Education.
Okay.
That's what it's
But
here.
my point is there's nothing internal.
Yep. So at the high school levels and stuff, they do have a committee that goes through it before it comes even to me, or even for them to go further.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there records of those meetings?
I can ask them for sure.
Well, my
because they
point
do
is,
meet
so they
regularly.
vote, so no one would say who voted how or what was voted on. How do we even know that it, other than you telling us it's gone through the process, that it's really done the right way?
I mean, I can ask, obviously, the high school board when they met and ask who was there and get their attendance records.
So
I mean, I can-
are there forms or standardized forms that everybody are supposed to fill out?
The form that you have in front of you is the form that they fill out before it comes. This is the form that it goes through.
But again, I'm back on the procedure side of things. So the high school has a committee that votes. Does Maltby have a committee that votes?
Multi wouldn't be bringing new courses. because
Okay,
it's
is it only the high school that brings new courses?
in Scranton was once in a while. And that
Okay,
comes through-
does Scranton have a committee that votes?
No, it probably
Then
comes
if we
through
have a
principal.
policies that we're trying to follow, why don't they do the same thing?
Principal would go through, so we met with the principal, the teachers, and then it came to me. And now I'm bringing it forward to you.
But my point is, if we're trying to follow a policy, do we have a policy that says this is how you're supposed to go about doing it? So the high school has a committee, but Scranton doesn't.
I believe you have a policy that shows you that.
So is every school following that policy?
These have gone through that policy, yes,
Are you sure?
yes. That's why. I'm
Okay,
bringing
can
it
you
in front of
supply us with some backup to make sure that's the case?
I can ask the high school for the dates of their meetings and who was attendance, absolutely.
Would there be any more to it than other than who's
I don't know
attended?
What their minutes look like. They go
Do
through
they
that,
take
and then they
meeting
go-
minutes? Do they take meeting minutes?
They may,
So that's kind of where I'm trying to go with this. If we're going to have a procedure, which I think we've talked about a lot tonight about a procedure, why isn't everyone following the same procedure?
so I think this application is leading them through the procedure.
So the application is the only procedure.
I think these are the things that are tying it together, what are they doing? Why are we doing it? What's the funding with it? All the different pieces are here. This is the stuff that the committee would have to decide on in order to go forward. Your question really is who's there and how do they, for me, if I was leading this through and it was a new thing, I would have the committee walking through and probably I'd be taking notes and drafts of this, likely, is so it might be something like that. This might end up being these might be their notes.
So the approving board has never seen the curriculum, never seen the textbook, never seen the course syllabus, never seen an outline. And this goes on over and over and over again in this school. So we're gonna approve this. We have no idea what they're teaching. We're assuming that our teachers are doing what's the best for us and that our curriculum adoption process is up to speed. Well, we've already shown a few holes in it tonight in the other curriculum adoption. So my suggestion going forward in 2022 is that we would know what we're adopting for curriculum, have an idea what's in it, and understand what we're teaching our students. Because as the board, we are given that task to oversee it and be responsible for it. So if we're gonna be responsible for something, we should know what we're responsible for. 100% supports team programming, 100%, it's not an issue. But we have no idea what we're approving. Now, are we experts on education, all of us? Probably not, but common sense applies, where the common sense from 7 people from the community would then decide what's being taught in their schools. It's about time we do that right now. So I'm in support of these ideas, but I want to see what's in the program before I'm going to support it. And I want to know to what end, we talked about the 2 STEAM programs, how they interlink with the earlier grades in the grade schools, and how they're going to interlink to the high school, and how they'll match up and help alignments. The other class I wouldn't know much about, but that would be my expertise, because over these years now, started in 2000, I've had experience with my students, or before actually, I should say before, from the spelling bees and all the other stuff. So I've had a lot of years in Brighton area schools, development or lack of transition ability when they get from one school to the next. So that would be my position as a board member. So I'd actually like to put this and table this until we get a copy of what's going to be taught in each class. As we go forward with each curriculum adoption in the future, we do the same thing. I'm all for it, but I'd like to see what's in it.
So you're making a motion?
Make a
Go ahead,
motion to
Mr.
table it.
So I'm just gonna, we have, 4 pages, 4-page document with everything from, the targets, it doesn't have a day-by-day instruction with it, but
Well, maybe we
what-
could give a small presentation on the classes. Let's say we took, let's just say, because we're gonna present this to our students, and we have 6,000 students. This is a portion of our students, Scranton has just near 1,000. And we're gonna take the time to invest in our teachers and our people that are bringing this curriculum forward, let them present their curriculum to us in a professional method, and maybe we take, 30 minutes for curriculum adoption on each thing that gets brought. Maybe if ROTC passes the muster at some point, the same thing will have to come here, and it'll be 30 minutes. But I believe that we need to know the content, the course content, what's being taught. And I'll share with you that I want to know what web links are being supplied to my students, to our students. What links for information that they'll get their information from and data. It's time.
Why would you want to know the web links?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah,
No, you don't.
yeah, I
Well,
do.
I guess what I would say is, I guess my point on this is, this has been before the board now for 6 weeks. It was for future action. There was a very thorough discussion by Ms. Mosier. We were given all of the data that's before us, discussed with.
All right, I was saying to say
Hold
what?
on, let me talk.
You'll ask.
It's our responsibility. You talk about our obligation as a board. Our obligation as a board is, that's why we bring things forward for future action. So that
That's
when
fair.
we see that, you say, hey, I got a question about this. I want to see these links. I want to see this backup. Ms. Mosier, will you provide that to me? Dr. Alwell, will you provide that to me? Because we as a board have an obligation when it goes through the process of going for future, and then now a month later, it's for action. Each board member has had 6 weeks to ask questions, to review material, to grill any administrator they want with regard to the information they're being asked to vote upon. And it's very disrespectful to then show up at 6 weeks later at the meeting and say, well, I don't have any, I have questions about what
How
I'm voting
dare
on.
you
So-
call me disrespectful? Roger Myers.
We've gone through the process, so
Roger Myers.
there's no further discussion. All those in favor,
Hold
signify
it,
by
I'm
aye.
not done. Bill
Aye.
Trombley had a question. He had a question, and I'm
He
gonna
still
answer
has the
it.
floor.
My position changed when I walked in Scranton Middle School, when they had advertisements on the
You're
wall.
out of line.
Oh, I'm not out of line. That advertisement on the wall went right to a pornographic site on a website. Now, Roger Myers,
We had three,
that's it. That's the end of it.
so we had, all those in favor,
You
signify by
can't
aye.
rattle me down, Roger.
Aye.
You
Any
cannot
nays?
rattle me down. Nay.
Mr. Trombley?
Nay.
All right, so we have these 3 new course offerings, 2 of which are STEAM that have been approved, 4 to 2. And that concludes our 4 action and moves us into for future action, school of choice. Dr. Alwell.
Yeah, just briefly, next month, we'd like to bring the annual proposal
Disrespectful.
in our,
Oh, my goodness.
in our, so in our initial consideration here, we have to do our enrollment projections that we do every year in the wintertime. That's on the to-do list, but potentially in the month of February, we're going to bring a proposal in front of you, probably similar to this year. We're very full in spots, which is great news for the district. We're spilling over, we have great enrollment across the district. But there are places where we can take school of choice as well. So we're probably going to bring a proposal similar to last year where we would recommend limited in certain grades and in certain schools, and then we'd be open in other places. And we might, last year we didn't take 12th graders, and that worked out pretty well for us. And so anyway, that would be next month. We're still working on, but are there any questions I have to still do all the enrollment projections with the team and everything. But are there any questions as we head into that?
Any questions regarding the school choice?
I think it's great. What we're doing now.
Okay.
We'll ask him at the next board meeting.
What? Yeah. Well, the one thing, just a quick sliding back one thing on the course proposals. I think one of the things that we could do on our end is sometimes it's in a initial presentation of it. It's fun to have the teacher there. They'll have the enthusiasm and kind of the vision, and it's fun for them to be part of. So that's maybe something we can add to that piece as we're presenting those for future action. So that's just an idea. But anyway, thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Alwell. The next item was the call to the public, continued for non-action items. We had no more cards.
No more comments, right?
No, there's, if you've already spoken, there's only for people that have not spoken at the call to the public with respect to a non-agenda item. So I didn't see any. So-
Yeah,
Agenda item, so now I would like to speak to non-agenda.
so the board policy that is in place right now is that speakers get a chance to speak one time. That's the board policy that, that you currently have in place. So you get one opportunity to address the Board of Education. So.
All right, so that moves us to the board committee reports, Board of Education bulletins. I don't think we had any committee meetings since our last meeting. And I know that one of the things that we need to think about, and I think should be the topic of discussion also at the January 24 workshop, is that we talk about the committee structure. If we're going to do a committee of the whole, and I know that Dr. Elwell has provided input as to restructuring it as a committee of the whole with potentially with liaisons. It's certainly nothing that we need to talk about tonight, but I think that's something that should be a topic that we discuss at the January 24 workshop. So,
Okay.
I have a bond committee report.
Bond committee report?
I do. Thank you. We're behind on some areas. And one is it's Scranton Middle School and the STEAM Center. And I'm not sure what we're going to do or how we're going to get it back on track so that we're not way out there. I also have for Scranton, with you gathering me down here, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we have some film and graphics for the doors at Scranton Middle School that would commonize all the doors on a safety and security program that may fit into the renovations that we're doing right now. And there's a purpose behind that. But in the bond committee, we discussed the scheduling and where we're at and what can be done and what date bids will be done and when we're going to be able to get satisfaction so students can enter classrooms. I personally visited the school and toured where we're at, parts that weren't finished and parts that were finished. But we're not ready for students in any one of really the STEAM renovated portions of the school, which by desire, we sure wouldn't want to push it off through next fall and further than that. So we should work out a deal, figure out how to get it finished so the teachers can get to work and be ready to go for at least the fall of this next coming school year. There'll be really one room set's totally empty and the others are in transition.
Was that timeline, the plan, when we approved the bids at the last meeting?
Well, what happened though, because we held them up a little due to, they slipped behind. And they weren't sent out for bids in a time appropriate manner to complete the task.
It appears that the engineer is taking longer to get his portion designed than what it would typically.
Right. So we need to put that on for discussion in our meeting that we're going to have for, to see where we're going to wind up, because we really need to get these projects as many to completion as we can and not move it down the road further so the students don't have the benefit. But in the situation, Roger, that you're discussing, that you said I was disrespectful, I came up with these. I'd like to pass them out, and I'll send one down to the superintendent. There you go. You can handle it. Thank you. We have people posting things on doors of our school buildings that are of a personal nature, and they're not of an educational nature. These things are posted with I don't know what intent, but I can tell you this, that a parent came to me with his 3 kids and gave me the information, and I checked it all out. And so in a way to fix that and to commonize, but also under Bill Trombley had a recommendation because he toured our, where'd you go?
Pentagon.
Pentagon, thank you. He's at the Pentagon, and they had commonized a lot of their doors so that for security purposes, it became a moot point. And this is just one idea where we can do a screening for the doors, and they'll all be the same. And then it won't be a decision what is on that door, but most recently it was not a good situation at Scranton. And it's been addressed. Superintendent handled it immediately, and it didn't last any longer than that. But while you're gaveling me down, I had a reason not to approve the curriculum, because in that, we need to know what's in those websites. We need to know the content of those websites. And I know you didn't know that's what I was going to say, because I
Well,
don't,
you had 6 weeks to ask that question.
I just learned it 2 days ago, President Myers, just a couple days ago. Ask the super, what day was I in the school?
It's very, very recent.
Within a few days, my tune changed because of this issue. If you read what that child was exposed to, and she's 10 years old. She came from Maltby to visit. Wait, I'm not done yet. I got to finish this. She was 10 years old. She came to visit us at Scranton Middle School with her parents, fortunately, for cheerleading practice. Come on, Roger. Our job is to protect these children at all costs. And this is a way we can protect them.
So I think this idea that Mr. Conley has, I think is one, I'd like to be able to present this to Officer Bell, because it is
Right.
in the recommendations from
Oh,
law
true.
enforcement. They've talked about covering doors as being beneficial.
In
Some-
windows,
What's that?
windows and doors.
Yeah, windows and
We
doors.
can screen them, so there's some stuff, some
So,
light
I think,
transfer.
I think
Can't
this is
see in.
I think this is an idea that we should,
Yeah, be
Definitely
part of our
welcome.
discussion on the 24th.
yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to be able to share it with
And that would
Officer
eliminate our
Bell.
problem.
But I think
And help.
sharing it with her ahead of time,
Oh, good idea.
before we get to the 24th, and just say, hey, this
Include
is,
her. I agree.
make sure you do
But
this.
this was
or-
on her work list, this kind of stuff.
This was the covering of the windows is one of the
See, right,
security
how that-
recommendations, so anyway, so that does fit, that fits with one of the things that's on that list.
Yeah.
So,
I was here for a presentation in the graphic arts, and they were printing things like this. It was for decoration purposes, but they were printing these for doors.
There you go. But we could
So this is already
standardize,
something they can do.
but we can go every school. We'll standardize every door. We'll make it where we're not going to deal with this issue again, like I dealt with Scranton a few days ago, which caused your gaveling and all that stuff because I was changing my tune. Well, prior to that, I had no reason not to adopt that curriculum, did I? Okay, but now I do. And I'll continue to hold that. And you will, when you learn, you'll do the same. Trust me, you'll change your whole opinion on it. So
This is about security. Are you done with your security presentation?
I'm bringing it up so you understand why.
You said you did a bond to me report.
That was it. I gave it to you regarding the STEAM Center. Well, this was part of it because I want to include it in
That's
this.
fine. And we're gonna talk about it on the 24th.
So, but I believe you need to change the way you run your meeting, Roger. I think it was awful.
thank you for the suggestion. I think
Conley,
this,
appreciate your comment.
It was awful.
I think this is a good suggestion. We'll get that over to Christy Bell. And
Thank you,
thank you for
Superintendent.
your work on it.
You're very
Thank you
welcome,
for-
and you can count on it.
Yep.
We'll look out for these kids,
Okay.
no matter what.
Krebs.
I just want to say that I attended the a cappella night on Friday night. Mr. Johnson does an awesome job again, bringing in another group, a couple groups, and presenting our kids. It was a really great time to hear the kids a cappella night.
What grades?
There was all the high school. It was the bel canto, chicapellas, notorious, and then he had two other groups that were not from the school. One of not this time they weren't. One of them was an adult male group, and then a group from a Grand Rapids area school that won a competition. So it was fun
They do an amazing job.
to say thank you to that.
One other positive report. So robotics got kicked off on Saturday and stopped by. They're working on Sunday. The team got together for, I think, 4 hours or so at the school. The only mishap there was they were practicing the fire alarms. Not the kids were, but the school was. So we had to do a little evacuation project, but it was just under testing and some other things. No problems with the fire alarms. They're working on them. And the students are organizing, and it looks like a solid operation, and looking forward to see what they do this year.
So we went from 2 to how many were there?
I believe in the neighborhood of 30 between the recruiting process from our 2 original returning after 60 or 70, by the way. So went to a couple, and then the recruiting process, Dr. Outlaw, our assistant principal was Matt.
Mr. Evans.
Mr.
Yep.
Evans, Matt got involved, Bill, myself, the students, and we met over there, and I think they put a good effort out to get the kids knowledgeable. That's similar in a way that I'd like to see for the JRTC, even the Howell program being offered so students know it's available. Once the students realized it was available, they started flowing in the door. And I saw a real nice opportunity for those kids working Sunday afternoon with their mentors. There were probably not less than a half a dozen mentors there working with the youth. which is really a wonderful thing. And we'll probably have as many as 10 or 15 mentors. They bring all different backgrounds to the students. Can't be found anywhere else. Those backgrounds come in from engineering to the mom that's taking care of the house and the family, to taking care of those kids, to the technicians as well. It's a nice diverse group that students get to work with. It's pretty exciting stuff. So that's good news for Brighton. Again, it's back and running and the kids look great. A few on their cell phones and they weren't active yet. They were kind of, some of the technology stuff they were reviewing would kind of put even me included in a way that you got to be included once you learn about it. So as soon as I see the cell phones put away and they're active, then I'll come back with another report. The cell phones are put away and everybody's got a project. So, but it looks good. So thank you. Appreciate the support on that.
Any further? All right. That concludes all items on our agenda this evening. The next meeting of the next regular board meeting is February 14, 2022 at 7 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks for coming. It's nice to meet you. Everybody's not.